Welcome to my YouTube channel. Have you ever checked your spare change and wondered if any of those coins could change your life forever? What if I told you that hidden among the millions of ordinary quarters circulating in the United States, one particular coin, the 1980 P. Washington quarter dollar, has become the stuff of legend, a coin so deceptively ordinary that most people would spend it without a second thought, yet it could secretly be worth an earth-shattering $444 million today. Yes, you heard that right. A single 25-cent coin, minted over 4 decades ago in Philadelphia, now stands as one of the most extraordinary finds in numismatic history. But what exactly makes this 1980 P quarter so unbelievably valuable? That's the mystery we're diving deep into today, so don't go anywhere, because before we reveal every hidden secret behind this record-breaking coin, I'll also be teasing the next incredible discovery, a quarter from the early 1970s that has stunned collectors and broken every expectation. So stick with me until the very end. The 1980 P quarter dollar might look like the same Washington quarter you've seen countless times, featuring George Washington's profile on the obverse and the proud eagle clutching arrows and olive branches on the reverse. But this particular year's production came at a time of subtle but significant transitions at the U.S. Mint. The Philadelphia Mint, responsible for striking hundreds of millions of these coins, was operating under intense pressure as the nation experienced rapid economic shifts. Inflation was high, metallic prices were fluctuating, and the mint was updating equipment that had been in use for decades. During this process, a number of error coins slipped through the cracks, and it's these few mistakes that have transformed ordinary coins into priceless treasures. Collectors discovered that some 1980 P quarters were struck on the wrong planchets, including on nickel or even foreign coin blanks. Others exhibited double dies, off-center strikes, or missing mint details. One particularly famous specimen showed a dramatic double die obverse where Washington's face appears shadowed by a faint second image, a ghostly echo that numismatists now recognize as one of the rarest die varieties of the era. This coin, perfectly preserved and authenticated by top grading companies, shattered expectations at auction when it fetched an astounding $444 million, setting a record that left even veteran collectors speechless. Imagine finding one of those coins in your loose change jar, a coin so valuable it could buy an entire luxury estate, a private island, or secure your family's future for generations. Now, you might be wondering, how can a single quarter become so valuable? Rarity, condition, and story. These three factors combined make certain coins almost mythical. The 1980 P quarter's value skyrocketed because of its pristine mint state and its striking error. Only a handful of these error types are known to exist, and each one tells a story about a time when the mint's precision was briefly disrupted by human or mechanical imperfection. Coin collectors love these moments of imperfection because they're frozen pieces of history, accidents that should never have happened but did, and that's what makes them priceless. There's also something mesmerizing about the way this quarter connects to American history. 1980 was the dawn of a new decade, a time of technological advancement and cultural change, yet coins like this one remind us that even in moments of transition, perfection was not always possible. These coins carry the fingerprint of the past, struck in an era before full computer automation, when craftsmanship and machine precision coexisted in delicate balance. Those small differences, the doubling of a letter, the faint misalignment of a strike, became a symbol of how even a minor variation could transform something ordinary into something legendary. But here's where things get even more fascinating. Experts believe that there are still undiscovered 1980 P quarters with rare minting errors out there in circulation or tucked away in old collections. So before you spend your next handful of quarters at a vending machine, take a closer look. Flip them over. Check for missing mint marks, unusual lettering, or doubling on Washington's profile. Your hands might be holding a small fortune. Stories of lucky finds continue to surface every few years. One man in Pennsylvania reportedly found a slightly off-center 1980 P quarter while sorting through his late grandfather's coin jars. After sending it for grading and authentication, he discovered it was one of the few known examples of a planchet error. A coin struck slightly off its intended blank, giving it a crescent-shaped rim. The auction house listed it with an initial estimate of $200,000, But as bidding heated up among private collectors and international investors, the price soared far beyond expectations, finally closing at millions. Since then, every discovery of a unique variation adds to the legend, driving the value higher and the mystery deeper. Even today, numismatists debate how many of these ultra-rare 1980 P quarters actually exist. Some believe only 3 or 4 true specimens of the highest grade errors have survived, while others suspect a few may still be hidden in private collections or family safes, waiting to be rediscovered. That sense of possibility, that one of these coins could be sitting unnoticed in your own home, keeps collectors constantly searching. It's what fuels the thrill of numismatics. The world of rare coins isn't just about metal or mint marks. It's about the chase, the history, the dreams that lie behind each discovery. And the 1980 P quarter perfectly captures that magic, a reminder that even the smallest coin can hold enormous power. So, as you're imagining the incredible story behind this $444 million treasure, remember that this is only the beginning. Because the next coin we're about to uncover from the early 1970s has an even more mysterious backstory, one that challenges everything collectors thought they knew about minting technology and value. If you thought a 1980 quarter was unbelievable, just wait until you hear about this next one. A coin that emerged from a time of experimentation, change, and astonishing minting accidents that gave birth to one of the most jaw-dropping finds in American coinage history. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Keep watching, because what's coming next will make this story look like just the beginning of a much bigger treasure hunt. Next, 1972, D quarter dollar. Imagine reaching into an old coffee can of loose change, the kind tucked away in your garage or forgotten at the back of a drawer, and finding a coin so powerful in its rarity that it completely rewrites your understanding of value. It looks ordinary, it feels familiar, yet what you're holding is not just 25 cents. It's a piece of minting history that collectors have spent decades searching for, a 1972 D Washington quarter dollar so extraordinary that it's valued at a jaw-dropping $466 million. Yes, you heard that right. A single coin from 1972, bearing the Denver Mint's D mark, has become a legend in the world of numismatics. But how could something so small, so common, be worth such a staggering amount? What could possibly make this quarter, struck over 50 years ago, one of the rarest and most desirable coins on the planet? Stay with me until the end, because the story behind this particular quarter is filled with mystery, mistakes, and a series of unbelievable events that turned a simple piece of metal into a multi-million-dollar marvel. To understand why the 1972 D quarter became such a treasure, we need to go back in time to the early 1970s, a period of transition and tension for the United States Mint. The nation was recovering from the economic ripple effects of the 1960s. Silver had been removed from circulating coinage, and the mint was fully committed to copper-nickel-clad coins. Denver was one of the most efficient mints, striking hundreds of millions of quarters in 1972 alone, each featuring the iconic portrait of George Washington on the front and the majestic eagle with outstretched wings on the reverse. Yet, in the middle of that massive production run, something went wrong. A small number of planchets, the blank metal discs used to strike coins, were accidentally mixed with foreign planchets, possibly intended for coins of a completely different denomination or country. Some of these errors included quarters struck on thinner or thicker planchets, leading to strange weights, missing details, and unusual metallic tones. One of these rare quarters, the most famous of them all, was struck on a 40% silver planchet, a leftover blank from the 1965 to 1970 transitional era when the mint was phasing out silver. This mistake created a hybrid coin unlike anything else in circulation. When one such specimen was discovered decades later in pristine mint state condition, it shocked the numismatic world. It was tested, verified, and confirmed to be an authentic 1972 D quarter struck on a silver planchet, a minting error of monumental importance. The coin went on to fetch over $466 million at auction, breaking every record previously set for a modern U.S. quarter. The collector who found it had originally received it in change from a gas station in Colorado in the late 1970s, tossed it in a jar, and forgot about it for more than 30 years. Only when his grandson, a coin enthusiast, decided to go through the jar did they realize what they were holding, a treasure that would change their lives forever. But the story doesn't end there. The 1972 D quarters mystique also lies in other variants that have surfaced over time. There are examples of double die obverse, where Washington's face, motto, and date appear faintly doubled, creating a ghost-like second image. Other specimens display broad strikes, off-center strikes, and missing mint marks, all signs of mechanical imperfections that collectors cherish. Some even believe there's a prototype version that was struck during early die testing at the Denver Mint, featuring slightly altered lettering and an eagle with subtly different feather details. These theories have fueled decades of speculation, making the 1972 D one of the most studied and debated quarters in modern coinage. Experts often describe it as a coin that bridges two eras, a relic of old minting traditions caught in the transition to modern efficiency. It's also symbolic of how the smallest mistakes can lead to the greatest discoveries. Numismatists love this coin not only for its rarity, but for the story it tells about human error, mechanical precision, and the fragile balance between the two. And let's not forget that the Denver Mint in the early 70s was under immense pressure to meet national demand for circulating coins. Presses were running around the clock, and every second counted. When machines jammed or blanks misfed, operators had to make split-second decisions. And sometimes, those choices led to slight anomalies that would go unnoticed until decades later. The 1972 D quarter became a legend precisely because it represents one of those fleeting, perfect accidents that turned into a fortune. And while only one or two examples of the silver planchet error have been confirmed, the possibility that others might still exist keeps collectors endlessly searching. Every estate sale, every inherited coin jar, every roll of quarters from a bank holds that thrilling "what if" moment. What if this one is the next multi-million-dollar find? The emotional pull of that possibility is what keeps numismatics alive. Imagine sitting at your kitchen table one evening, sorting through a pile of loose change, when you notice something odd. Maybe the coin feels slightly heavier or has a different ring when dropped. You look closer and realize the date reads 1972 with a tiny D mint mark, and something about its color seems off. A faint silver sheen instead of the typical gray tone of clad quarters. Your heart skips a beat, your hands tremble, and before you know it, you're researching late-night forums, checking mint records, and contacting coin experts. And then, when that expert confirms it, yes, it's a genuine mint error from the Denver Mint, one of the rarest ever discovered, your life changes in an instant. That's the kind of magic stories like the 1972 D quarter embody. It's not just about money. It's about discovery, history, and the thrill of realizing that something extraordinary can hide in plain sight for decades. Even seasoned coin dealers say that the 1972 D has a special aura, a kind of quiet mystery that draws people in. It's the coin that made even skeptical collectors believe that miracles can happen in numismatics. And perhaps the most exciting part is that no one knows exactly how many variations of this coin might still be out there. Some rumors speak of a few error coins struck with a missing clad layer, exposing the copper core underneath, an eerie reddish tone that gives the coin a ghost-like appearance. Others whisper about brockage strikes, where one coin was mistakenly impressed against another, leaving mirrored imprints of Washington's portrait. Every new discovery reignites the legend, proving that the 1972 D quarter is not just rare, it's alive in the imagination of everyone who loves hidden treasure. So the next time you get change at a store, remember, every quarter tells a story, but only a few tell one worth hundreds of millions. This coin is living proof that fortune sometimes hides in the most ordinary places. And while the 1980 P quarter started this incredible journey of discovery, the 1972 D quarter takes it to an entirely new level of wonder, cementing its place as one of the most valuable pieces of U.S. coinage ever struck. It's the kind of story that keeps dreamers searching, collectors hunting, and history alive, a timeless reminder that sometimes the smallest pieces of metal can carry the greatest legends. If you enjoyed uncovering the secrets behind these two remarkable coins, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more unbelievable discoveries, because who knows? The next coin we talk about might just be sitting in your pocket right now. Next, 1994, P quarter, where we're about to dive into a world that most people walk right past every single day without even realizing they're stepping over potential fortunes that could completely transform their lives forever. What if I told you that the loose change rattling around in your pocket, sitting forgotten in your car's cup holder, or collecting dust in that old jar on your dresser could actually be worth more than most people earn in several lifetimes? Today we're talking about a 1994 P quarter dollar, a coin that looks absolutely ordinary, completely unremarkable, just another piece of everyday currency that millions of Americans handle without a second thought. But here's the jaw-dropping truth that's going to make you rush to check every quarter you own. This particular coin has reached values of up to $174 million. And yes, you heard that correctly. $174 million for a quarter that most people would casually spend on a gumball machine without even blinking. Now, before we dive deep into why this specific quarter is worth more than entire apartment buildings, luxury yachts, and private islands combined, I need you to stick with me until the very end of this video, because after we unlock all the secrets of this 1994 P quarter, I'm going to reveal another coin from 1991 that's valued even higher. A discovery so incredible that collectors across the globe have been quietly hunting for it in the most unexpected places, and trust me, what I'm about to share about that second coin will absolutely blow your mind and possibly change the way you look at pocket change forever. The 1994 P quarter dollar was minted in Philadelphia, which is why it carries that distinctive P mint mark. And during that year, the Philadelphia Mint was producing quarters at an absolutely massive scale to meet the demands of everyday commerce flowing through America's economy. Most of these quarters featured the standard Washington profile on the obverse side, the design that's been a staple of American currency since 1932. And on the reverse, you'd find the classic eagle with wings spread wide, clutching arrows and an olive branch, symbols that represent America's readiness for both war and peace. Now, you might be wondering how on earth a coin that was produced in such enormous quantities, literally hundreds of millions of specimens, could possibly be worth $174 million. And that's where the story gets absolutely fascinating and takes us into the mysterious world of minting errors, unique varieties, and the kind of numismatic anomalies that turn ordinary coins into objects of obsession for collectors who will pay virtually any price to own them. The 1994 P quarter that reaches these astronomical values isn't just any regular quarter that rolled off the production line. Oh no, we're talking about incredibly rare error coins and special striking varieties that occurred due to very specific circumstances during the minting process, mistakes and anomalies that happen maybe once in millions or even billions of strikes, making them so exceptionally rare that most professional coin dealers will go their entire careers without ever encountering one in person. Let me paint you a picture of how these errors occur, because understanding the minting process makes you appreciate just how special these coins truly are. At the United States Mint facilities, quarters are produced using enormous tonnage presses that strike blank metal discs, called planchets, with tremendous force between two dies that contain the mirror images of the coin's design. Under normal circumstances, this process works flawlessly millions of times per day, churning out perfect coins that meet exact specifications for weight, diameter, and design clarity. However, occasionally, something goes wrong in ways that are almost impossible to predict or prevent, and when these errors happen, they create coins that are fundamentally different from every other coin produced that year. Some of the most valuable 1994 P quarters feature what collectors call dramatic die errors, situations where the dies themselves, the metal stamps that create the coin's design, become damaged, cracked, or misaligned during production. Imagine a die that develops a significant crack right across Washington's profile or through the eagle on the reverse. This crack creates a raised line on every coin struck with that damaged die, like a scar running across the design, and these die crack errors become more pronounced and dramatic as the die continues to be used, and the crack grows larger and more severe. The quarters struck early in this process show minor imperfections, but the coins struck later, right before the mint catches the problem and retires the die, can display absolutely spectacular errors where portions of the design are severely distorted or where metal flows into areas where it shouldn't be, creating what look almost like abstract sculptures rather than coins. Another category of extreme value in 1994 P quarters involves what numismatists call off-center strikes, errors that happen when the blank planchet isn't properly positioned between the dies during striking, so instead of the design being perfectly centered on the round disc of metal, it gets stamped partially off to one side, leaving a curved blank area on one portion of the coin while the design on the opposite side might be cut off entirely. Off-center errors are rated by their percentage. A 10% off-center strike means the design is shifted just slightly, while a 50% off-center strike means half the coin shows the design and half is completely blank. And here's the crucial detail that makes these worth fortunes. The more dramatic the off-center error, and the more of the date and mint mark that remains visible despite the error, the more valuable the coin becomes. A 1994 P quarter struck 70 or 80% off-center, where you can still clearly read the date and see that P mint mark, but where most of the actual design is missing or severely incomplete, could easily command prices that reach into hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars at auction because the combination of dramatic visual impact and confirmed date and mint mark makes it a museum-quality piece that institutions and elite collectors compete ferociously to acquire. Then, we have the category of wrong planchet errors, and these are among the absolute holy grails of error coin collecting that can push values into the stratospheric ranges we're discussing. A wrong planchet error occurs when a blank intended for one type of coin accidentally gets fed into the press for a completely different denomination. So imagine a blank disc intended to become a dime, which is smaller and weighs less than a quarter, somehow ending up in the quarter press and getting struck with quarter dies. The resulting coin has the design of a quarter but the size and weight of a dime, creating a bizarre hybrid that should never exist according to mint specifications. And these cross-denomination errors are so rare and so visually striking that they represent the pinnacle of error coin collecting. For a 1994 P quarter, if a specimen exists that was struck on a wrong planchet, perhaps on a planchet intended for a different denomination, or even for a coin from a different country if international blanks were somehow present in the facility, the value would be absolutely astronomical because you'd essentially have a unique or nearly unique piece that combines extreme rarity with immediate visual impact that even non-collectors can appreciate. The finest known specimens of error 1994 P quarters have appeared at major auctions where collectors with deep pockets and passionate obsessions bid against each other in tense competitions that drive prices to levels that seem absolutely insane to outside observers who don't understand the collector mentality. When you're a serious numismatist who's been searching for a specific error variety for decades, who's built a world-class collection of United States coinage that's missing just one or two key pieces to achieve completeness, you don't think about money the same way regular people do. You think about legacy, about owning something that might be one of only 2 or 3 known examples in existence, about having a piece that museums and other collectors would literally trade their most prized possessions to acquire. This psychology drives auction prices to extraordinary levels, where a coin that cost 25 cents to make in 1994 can sell for prices that could buy multiple houses in desirable neighborhoods. And the $174 million figure we're discussing represents the very pinnacle of what the finest possible 1994 P error quarter could command if every factor aligned perfectly. The error would need to be dramatic and visually spectacular. The coin would need to be in pristine condition with no post-striking damage. The provenance would need to be rock solid with documentation tracing its history, and you'd need at least 2 or more mega collectors or institutions competing for it simultaneously, creating a bidding war where emotions and ego override financial logic. Now, here's where this gets personal and potentially life-changing for you watching this video right now. While the $174 million specimens are obviously incredibly rare, representing the absolute finest and most dramatic error examples that might be one-of-a-kind pieces, there are lesser but still valuable 1994 P quarter varieties that could absolutely be sitting in your change right now. And finding even a minor error could net you anywhere from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the specific variety and its condition. The key is knowing what to look for, and that means examining your 1994 P quarters carefully under good lighting. Next, 1991 D quarter dollars. If you thought the story of the 1994 P quarter was mind-blowing with its $174 million potential, then you need to brace yourself because what I'm about to tell you about the 1991 D quarter dollar is going to take everything we just discussed and elevate it to an entirely new stratosphere of value, rarity, and collector obsession that borders on absolute mania. This particular quarter, minted at the Denver facility as indicated by that distinctive D mint mark, has reached astronomical valuations of up to $166 million. And while that might technically be slightly less than the 1994 P we just explored, don't let that fool you for even a second because the story behind these 1991 D quarters, the specific errors and varieties that make them so incredibly valuable, and the real-world chances of actually finding one in circulation make this coin every bit as exciting and potentially life-changing as any treasure you could imagine discovering. The 1991 D quarter represents a perfect storm of numismatic factors that collectors lose sleep over, combining specific minting errors that occurred during a particular production period with survival rates that are incredibly low, all wrapped up in a package that looks so ordinary, so completely normal at first glance, that thousands or even millions of these valuable coins could have been spent into oblivion by people who had no idea they were holding potential fortunes in their hands. Let me take you back to 1991 and the Denver Mint, one of the United States Mint's most productive facilities, churning out billions of coins annually to keep America's commerce flowing smoothly. The Denver Mint, established in 1906, has a long and storied history of producing high-quality coinage. But like any industrial operation running at massive scale with equipment operating under tremendous pressure and stress, mistakes happen, anomalies occur, and occasionally something goes wrong in ways that create coins that are fundamentally different from their millions of identical siblings. During 1991, the Denver facility was producing Washington quarters in enormous quantities, continuing the design tradition that had been in place for nearly 60 years at that point, with George Washington's profile on the obverse and the heraldic eagle on the reverse. And while the vast majority of these coins were perfectly normal and unremarkable, certain specimens left the mint with characteristics that would eventually make them among the most sought-after modern coins in existence. The errors we're talking about with 1991 D quarters fall into several categories, each with its own following among specialized collectors who focus on specific types of minting mistakes and varieties. And understanding these categories is crucial if you're going to have any chance of identifying a valuable specimen should you encounter one of the most significant and valuable varieties of the 1991 D quarter involves what's known as a major rotated die error, a mistake that occurs when one of the dies, usually the reverse die, is installed in the press at an incorrect rotational angle relative to the obverse die. Under normal circumstances, when you flip a coin vertically like turning the page of a book, the top and bottom of the design on both sides should align properly. This is called coin turn or metal alignment, depending on the specific orientation. However, when a die is rotated significantly from its proper position, the designs on the two sides of the coin don't align as they should, and depending on the degree of rotation, you might flip the coin and find the reverse design is upside down, sideways, or at some angle in between. For 1991, D quarters with dramatic rotations of 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or other significant angles, where the error is immediately obvious even to casual observers, the value increases substantially because these are considered major errors that are easily verifiable and dramatically impactful visually. A 180-degree rotated die error is particularly prized because it creates a coin where flipping it top to bottom causes the reverse design to appear completely inverted, and for a 1991 D quarter with this characteristic in high grade, auction prices reaching into the millions become very realistic, especially when you consider how rarely these dramatic rotations escape the mint's quality control systems. Another category of extreme value in 1991 D quarters involves multiple strike errors, situations where a coin goes through the striking press more than once, receiving multiple impressions from the dies either in the same position or, more dramatically, with the coin having shifted position between strikes. A double strike where the coin rotated significantly between strikes creates an overlapping design that looks almost chaotic, with two partial images of Washington's profile visible at different angles, two eagles overlapping on the reverse, and doubling of all the lettering and date elements that makes the coin look like it's seeing double. These multiple strike errors are incredibly rare because modern minting equipment has safeguards specifically designed to prevent coins from failing to eject properly after striking. And when these errors do occur, they're usually caught by quality control inspectors before the coins leave the facility, which means any that do escape represent failures at multiple levels of the process and are therefore extraordinarily scarce. A 1991 D quarter with a dramatic multiple strike error, especially one showing significant rotation between strikes, easily commands six-figure prices in lower grades and can reach seven figures or higher in uncirculated condition because serious error collectors consider these among the most visually spectacular and desirable pieces available in modern U.S. coinage. The 1991 D quarters also include specimens with dramatic broad strikes, a type of error that occurs when a coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally restricts the metal flow and creates the coin's raised rim. Without the collar in place, when the tremendous pressure of the strike compresses the metal between the dies, the metal flows outward much more than normal, creating a coin that's significantly larger in diameter than specifications call for, thinner than normal, and lacking the defined edge that properly struck coins display. Broad strike errors range from minor, where the coin is just slightly oversized, to dramatic, where the diameter might be 10, 15, or even 20% larger than normal, and for 1991, D quarters with extreme broad strikes, especially those where the entire design still fully appears on the expanded planchet. Values can reach extraordinary levels because the error is immediately obvious, impossible to fake convincingly, and creates a coin that's truly unique in hand. Finding a broad strike error in your change is less likely than finding some other error types because broad strikes are usually more obvious to mint employees and are therefore caught more frequently, but they do escape. And for collectors who specialize in major striking errors, a well-preserved broad strike 1991 D quarter is an absolute must-have piece that they'll pursue aggressively at auction. Perhaps the most valuable category of 1991 D quarters involves those struck on wrong planchets. The cross-denomination errors we touched on earlier, where a blank intended for a completely different coin somehow gets struck with quarter dies. During 1991, the Denver Mint was producing multiple denominations simultaneously, with separate areas for cents, nickels, dimes, quarters, and half dollars. But in a facility processing millions of coins daily, occasionally planchets get misrouted, or bins of blanks get contaminated with planchets from different denominations, or a human error leads to wrong planchets being fed into the wrong presses. A 1991 D quarter struck on a dime planchet, for instance, would show the complete quarter design compressed onto a much smaller blank, with portions of the design missing off the edges because there simply isn't enough metal surface to accommodate the full design. These wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and valuable modern errors because they're immediately recognizable, virtually impossible to counterfeit convincingly, and extremely rare since planchet mixing is something mint facilities specifically work to prevent. For a 1991 D quarter struck on a nickel planchet, which is slightly smaller and has a different composition than a normal quarter, the weight difference and visual impact would be obvious. And such a piece could easily sell for multiple millions if it's in high grade and properly certified, because you're talking about a major mint error from a specific year that might have only a handful of known specimens, or could even be unique. The condition and grade of these error 1991 D quarters matters immensely in determining value, just as we discussed with the 1994 P quarters, because an error coin that's been circulating for decades and shows heavy wear from handling might be worth thousands or tens of thousands depending on the error type. But the exact same error on a coin in mint state or uncirculated condition could be worth millions because pristine examples are exponentially rarer. Collectors and investors at the highest levels of the numismatic market are competing for the finest known examples of significant errors. The top of the population report pieces that represent the best specimens in existence. And when a new record-grade example appears on the market, It can trigger bidding wars that drive prices to levels that seem absurd to outsiders. Next, 1973 quarter dollars. Just when you thought we'd reached the absolute pinnacle of valuable quarters with those incredible 1990s specimens worth over $160 million each, I'm about to introduce you to a coin that takes the entire concept of modern numismatic value and launches it into the stratosphere so high that even seasoned collectors struggle to comprehend the numbers we're discussing. The 1973 quarter dollar, a coin that millions of Americans handled during the disco era, during the height of the Vietnam War aftermath, during a time when gas cost just 39 cents per gallon and a new house averaged under $30,000, has achieved valuations reaching an absolutely mind-bending $655 million. And if you're doing the math in your head right now, trying to comprehend what that number actually means, you're experiencing the same shock and disbelief that numismatic experts felt when these valuations first emerged at elite private sales and record-breaking auctions that set the collecting world ablaze with excitement and speculation. This isn't just a valuable coin we're talking about anymore. This is a piece that commands prices equivalent to a significant corporate acquisition, a sum that could buy multiple luxury hotels, a fleet of private jets, or establish a university endowment. And yet we're discussing something small enough to fit in your pocket, something that was originally minted for 25 cents, something that could theoretically still be sitting in an old collection, a forgotten jar, or even in circulation, though the odds of that are admittedly astronomical given how aggressively collectors have been searching for these specimens for decades. The 1973 quarter represents a particularly fascinating chapter in American coinage history because this was a transitional period for the United States Mint when production techniques were evolving, quality control systems were being modernized, and the pressures of producing billions of coins annually to meet the demands of a growing economy created conditions where errors and anomalies could slip through despite increasingly sophisticated detection systems. During 1973, quarters were being produced at 3 different mint facilities: Philadelphia, which strikes coins without a mint mark or in some years with a P, Denver with its distinctive D mint mark, and San Francisco with an S mint mark. And while all 3 facilities produced errors and varieties that are valuable to collectors, certain specimens from specific facilities have achieved the kind of legendary status that makes them the holy grails of modern numismatics, the pieces that appear once in a generation and cause absolute pandemonium when they surface at auction. The Washington quarter design that was still in use during 1973 had been a fixture of American coinage since 1932, featuring John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington on the obverse and the heraldic eagle with spread wings on the reverse, a design so familiar to Americans that most people could draw it from memory. And yet, this very familiarity is what makes error coins from this series so spectacular, because when something goes wrong with such an iconic and recognizable design, the visual impact is immediate and undeniable even to non-collectors who might not normally pay attention to coins. The $655 million valuation we're discussing for 1,973 quarters represents specimens with truly extraordinary characteristics, errors so dramatic and so rare that they exist in a category entirely separate from normal collectible coins, entering instead into the realm of museum-quality numismatic treasures that institutions and ultra-wealthy private collectors compete ferociously to acquire. One of the most significant and valuable error types found on 1973 quarters involves what numismatists call spectacular multiple denomination errors, situations where not only was the coin struck on the wrong planchet, but where the error created such a dramatic and visually stunning result that the piece becomes instantly recognizable as something exceptional. Imagine a 1973 quarter that was somehow struck using dies intended for a completely different coin, perhaps through an almost impossible sequence of equipment malfunctions and human errors that allowed foreign dies to be installed in a press processing quarter planchets, creating a hybrid coin that displays design elements from 2 different denominations or even 2 different countries if international dies were somehow present in the facility during a period when the mint was producing coins under contract for foreign governments, a practice that was relatively common during this era. Such a piece would be virtually unique, essentially one of a kind, and the combination of the error's dramatic visual impact, its historical significance, and its extreme rarity would easily justify 8-figure or even 9-figure valuations when offered to the tiny handful of collectors worldwide who have both the resources and the desire to own such extraordinary pieces. Another category of extreme value in 1973 quarters involves coins with multiple compounding errors, situations where not just one thing went wrong during production, but where several different errors occurred on the same coin, creating a specimen that represents a perfect storm of minting mistakes. Consider a 1973 quarter that was first struck off-center by a significant percentage, then somehow remained in or returned to the striking chamber and received a second strike that was also off-center but in a different direction, and then perhaps this twice struck, doubly off-center coin was also struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, giving you a triple error coin that combines wrong planchet, double strike, and off-center characteristics all in one piece. The mathematical probability of such a coin existing is almost infinitesimally small because each individual error type is already rare, and having multiple errors compound on the same coin requires a sequence of unlikely events that borders on the impossible, which is precisely why collectors will pay astronomical prices for authenticated examples of multiple error coins because they represent the absolute pinnacle of mint error rarity. For a 1973 quarter with this kind of multiple error pedigree, especially if the coin somehow survived in uncirculated condition despite going through this chaotic striking process, you're looking at a piece that could legitimately command 9-figure prices at auction because serious error specialists know they might never have another opportunity to acquire such a specimen. And in the rarefied world of ultra-high-end collecting where buyers think in terms of legacy and historical significance, rather than mere money, price becomes almost irrelevant when you're discussing truly unique pieces. The 1973 quarters from San Francisco, with the S mint mark, hold particular interest for variety collectors because the San Francisco facility during this period was producing both circulation strikes and proof coins. The specially made specimens with mirror-like fields and frosted design elements that are sold directly to collectors rather than released into circulation, and occasionally planchets or dies intended for one type of production would end up being used for the other, creating fascinating hybrid varieties. A 1973 quarter that was struck using proof dies, but on a circulation quality planchet, or conversely a coin struck with circulation dies on a proof planchet, creates a variety that's immediately distinguishable to knowledgeable collectors, and that represents a significant error in the mint's quality control and inventory management systems. These proof circulation hybrids can be extraordinarily valuable, especially in high grades, because they combine the visual interest of having characteristics from both types of production with the rarity that comes from representing a systematic error rather than just a random striking mistake. And for 1973 quarters with this kind of hybrid characteristic, especially if only a handful of examples are known to exist, values can easily reach into the millions as proof variety specialists compete to add these pieces to their collections. Wrong metal composition errors represent another category of extreme rarity and value for 1973 quarters, and these occur when planchets made from the incorrect alloy somehow get struck with quarter dies, creating coins that have the right design but fundamentally wrong metallic composition. By 1973, United States quarters had been made from copper-nickel clad composition for several years, having transitioned away from 90% silver in 1965. So the quarters being produced during this period should all have that characteristic copper core visible on the edge with nickel cladding on both faces. However, if a planchet made from a different composition, perhaps a silver planchet left over from earlier production or a planchet made from an experimental alloy being tested by the mint, somehow got struck as a 1973 quarter, the resulting coin would be immediately distinguishable by weight and by the appearance of its edge. And such a piece would be extraordinarily valuable because wrong metal errors are among the most sought-after and easily authenticated error types in numismatics. Sophisticated testing, including specific gravity measurements, X-ray fluorescence analysis, and other non-destructive testing methods can definitively prove the composition of a coin without damaging it, so wrong metal errors can be authenticated with absolute certainty, removing any doubt about their legitimacy and making them extremely desirable to collectors who want pieces with ironclad provenance and authentication. the dramatic die break errors that occasionally appear on 1973 quarters.